Hola, mi amigos and amigas. ¿Cómo está? How you guys doing today? It is December 14th. We are, 10, 11 days from Christmas? We are chugging along and got a lot going on. Normally around Christmas, everything just kind of hits the brakes, like the Polar Express when a penguin grabs the wire. But no, this one's lots going on in Hollywood, lots going on around DC specifically, and yeah, it's big. But I'm kind of half distracted right now. My Carolina Panthers are playing right now. They have come from out of nowhere to have an opportunity to make the playoffs to win the NFC South. I'm still dubious about it because I don't think they're quite there yet. I think they're still a season away, but if they win today and they're up 17-10 the last time I checked, and they beat Tampa Bay next week, they win the division. Totally blows my mind. So, hey, Mr. Nope. Now, we're not going to do football talk. I understand that's not what you come here for. If you did, we could do that. But no. What we're going to talk about today is a few different things. We saw the trailer for Supergirl. We've seen a teaser, just a teeny, teeny, tiny teaser for Lanterns. There is the casting rumors for the Batman. And, of course, there is the new Knives Out movie, Wake Up Dead Man, that just popped up on Netflix. So we're going to talk about all of those things. If there's anything you guys want to talk about, feel free to throw it into the chat while I kind of subtly try to do a quick score check on my Panthers. Oh no, they might have tied it up. Oh boy. Okay. Anyway, fingers still crossed. All right, so let's get into it. Let's see, which one should we talk about first? Let's talk about Lanterns. Lanterns, the smallest topic. What we saw was not really a teaser trailer for the Lanterns. What we saw was a teaser trailer for HBO. It showed a bunch of stuff. It showed The Pit and Euphoria and all of their shows. And it gave just a few seconds, 30 seconds, whatever. But what we saw of Lanterns, you can tell that it feels different than anything else they have going on right now. Um, it feels what they're trying to do is kind of that True Detective feel, and I think they're pulling that off at least in just the footage, the look of the footage. And we see one of the most Hal Jordan moves ever. And if you haven't seen this trailer, you should probably take a look. I think they've broke it down into individual pieces too. But in the trailer, they're in this old 90s Buick or something like that. Could be an Oldsmobile. And they're driving along, and Hal's driving, and Hal, of course, played by Kyle Chandler, Aaron Pierre playing John Stewart. John Stewart's in the passenger seat, and Hal puts a ring up on the dashboard. Now, I'm thinking it's his ring, but either way. So he puts the ring up on the dashboard, and John Stewart's talking about how, I've been training for this my whole life. And Hal says something to the effect of, you don't decide when you can go to the front of the class, the ring does. So then he puts the ring, and it is a beaten up ring. It's got cracks in the side. This ring has been through the wars. But he jumps out the car. You see him rolling in behind the car, and Aaron Pierre or John Stewart's like, and it's a test to make him suddenly decide how to save himself, how to save the car. So it's kind of an interesting thing we get to see because we see like a clip of them investigating something. him on a field and it looks like it's around body bags, a town hall meeting, and then that scene in the car. That's all we get. But I think in that they gave us that little sense of what the show might be or feel like. And that was pretty good. I actually liked that a lot. So we'll have to see how that works out. We still don't know when we're going to get it. It's likely going to be after Supergirl, like in the spot where we got Penguin or Peacemaker season 2. And I don't think that's a DC Studios decision. That sounds like an HBO decision. Basically, they look at their schedule and they go, okay, we got The Pit here, we got Euphoria here, we got this other show, the Night of the Seven whatevers from Game of Thrones here. We got to put all these things into their place. So where can we put Lanterns? And they don't want to overlap them too much. You want to have everybody get their time in the sun. Plus, they want to have some marquee series going on to get people to keep their subscriptions. You don't want to put everything on in one chunk of weeks and then suddenly, oh yeah, for the next 2 months we don't have hardly anything. Oh yeah, we'll just pause the subscription. So I mean that's the whole. It's a business, and the whole thing is to keep eyes on the prize. So all right. By the way, we got a few other people lurking. Hello, glad to see you. So that's my thoughts on Lanterns. I thought it was a pretty interesting teaser trailer. We'll have to go from there. I think what we'll talk about now is the new Knives Out movie. Now, I'm not going to do spoilers. I don't want to do spoilers. I don't want to spoil anything for you guys. But just a couple, maybe we'll do a spoiler conversation in a week or so and kind of look at all of them. I rewatched Knives Out. I meant to rewatch Glass Onion, but ran out of time. And I watched Wake Up Dead Man. There's a couple consistent things that run through it besides just Benoit Blanc and Noah, whatever his last name is, the Ryan Johnson's friend who has little bit parts, or Joseph Gordon-Levitt, who has little voiceover parts in all of them. Did you know that? Joseph Gordon-Levitt in Knives Out is the voice of the true crime podcast. In Glass Onion, he is the ding or the dong or whatever it is that the chime that plays. He recorded that. And then in this one, he's a sportscaster while someone's watching a baseball game. So they're not on screen stuff, but he gets his voice in there and stuff. That's pretty cool. But the thing that stood out to me last night while watching this movie, okay, first thing, I liked it. We just start with that. Wake Up Dead Man is a good murder mystery. It's not as quirky as, say, Glass Onion, which was extremely quirky, or even the first Knives Out, which, that was, it's almost, Ryan Johnson is basically homaging different types of murder mysteries. And this is a locked room one. It is more of a gothic mystery. So he's got that. So it's a little more serious, but great cast. Though some of them are a bit underutilized. Now, you know how in the first two movies, and if you haven't seen them, I'm sorry, but they've been out long enough, you should know. Each one of the killers has been a member of the MCU. Chris Evans in the first one, Ed Norton in the second one. So you look at this cast and you're like, okay, who's going to be the killer? Who's in the MCU? And this one gets you because it's like, Josh Brolin's in this. He was Thanos. Great. Jeremy Renner's in this. He was Hawkeye. Ooh, now I got two here. Oh, Glenn Close is in this. She was in Guardians of the Galaxy. I got three. But he's done this before because, Dave Bautista was in Glass Onion, even though he wasn't the killer. So that's when I go into a movie like that, I think, okay, that's one of the tropes. Um, but Ryan Johnson does a lot to shake that up. And one of the things he does is successful in shaking it up. Do you think excessive Orient Express brought up the Knives Out craze? Yes, I do. I think Murder on the Orient Express was so well done that it opened the door to another one of these. Um, I'm not going to say uh, the Knives Out craze. What I'm going to say is the idea of the star-studded murder mysteries. We used to get them in the 70s, and they would do them off the Agatha Christie. There was Murder on the Orient Express back then. There was Death on the Nile. There was Evil Under the Sun. We had this whole set of films, these murder mysteries, and there was some outside of Agatha Christie as well. And we've kind of looped back into those, and it started with the Kenneth Branagh film, and love those as well, by the way. Even The Haunting in Venice, which is not the original title. It's based off The Halloween Party or something like that. But, that one's probably the biggest stray from the novels. But overall, I really liked him, and I really hope he comes back and does more. Because it's a character he can keep doing. It doesn't matter his age, you know. So I'm all for him doing more Agatha Christie books, adapting Agatha Christie books. And the Agatha Christie estate pretty much told him, well, whenever you want to do them, as long as you want to do them, I'm in. Yeah, that's almost two mustaches. It's like his mustache has a mustache. So no, I do love the Kenneth Branagh is the one that plays Poirot in there. He co-writes it, directs it, and plays Poirot. So, but Kenneth Branagh has always been an amazing. Hey Ed, good to see you, bud. Branagh has always been a good mystery director and stuff. Let me recommend a movie that's a little lesser known, but it is in my top 10 of all time. It's a Kenneth Branagh movie with Emma Thompson and Derek Jacobi, Andy Garcia, and it's called Dead Again. It's a murder mystery, and even Robin Williams pops up in it in a very un-Robin Williams role. And this was early enough; this was before people started really taking Robin Williams seriously as a serious actor. So this was out of left field for him at the time. Dead Again is probably one of my favorite murder mysteries, and it's one of the few that at the end I'm like, I had no idea. I didn't get it. Knives Out usually does it to me. I will admit, I had most of it figured out on Wake the Dead or Wake Up Dead Man, which is fine. There were still a few twists and stuff at the end that got me. But yeah, what's funny is Lisa and I watched it together, and we got near the end, and I said, "Okay, let's do our suspects." And she gave me one, and I had a different one, and in a way, we were both kind of right. It's kind of funny that way. So I'll just leave it at that. But one of the things that stood out to me is Glenn Close, in a lot of ways, is playing Cloris Leachman in the movie. And if you get that reference, you and I are friends, obviously. But how Cloris Leachman would play the characters in the Mel Brooks movies, whether it's Frau Brula, never could pronounce it right, but I don't have the horses to neigh behind me either, in Young Frankenstein, or the nurse in High Anxiety. And if you guys haven't seen High Anxiety and you're a Hitchcock fan, you should definitely see High Anxiety. But she comes across like Cloris Leachman through the movie, and I'm like, I even put it on my Facebook page. Like, when did Glenn Close become Cloris Leachman? Yeah. And I think Paul, the guy I used to do this show with, Paul Story, agreed. He was like, yeah, I saw that too. So um, there's some interesting acting choices in there. Jeremy Renner is in it, and he plays a little scattered. And what's funny is I've seen some people online talking about, oh, I don't know if he's come back from his accident well or anything. And I look at it, I'm like, this is what the character's supposed to be. This has nothing to do with him being healthy or not. He did great. It's a weird ass character. It's a scattered character. Andrew, I cannot think of his last name, but he played Moriarty again opposite Benedict Cumberbatch in Sherlock. He's got a great character that I'm pretty sure is supposed to be L. Ron Hubbard, like the early days of L. Ron Hubbard. There's for James Bond fans, Jeffrey Wright and Daniel Craig are both in this movie. So Casino Royale, there you go. Thomas Hayden Church is in it. Again, he could have done a lot more, but it was good. The guy playing the main priest, not Josh Brolin's character, but I think his name is Connor, Josh Connors or something like that. Really good. Really, really good. No, Martin Freeman was Watson. Andrew was Moriarty in the Sherlock Holmes. I can't think of his last name off the top of my head. But yeah, so no, it's a really good movie. It's a really good cast. I liked it quite a bit. I liked it just fine. So, all right. You guys have any questions on that? I told you, I got to do a score check. Might go to overtime. Damn it. Come on, Panthers. Andrew Scott. Thank you. Thank you. That was it. Andrew Scott's a great actor, by the way. He was also in Fleabag with Phoebe something Waller. A little scattered today. All right, let's move on. Should we talk about Supergirl trailer or the Batman castings? I think I'm going to go on more about the Batman castings. Let's go with the Supergirl trailer. So I made a video the other night on TikTok because I noticed something that was happening. And I wanted to clarify it as somebody who knows comics. In the Supergirl trailer, there's a moment that a dome is going up over a city. Now, if you're a longtime comic reader, you have an idea of what that is. But if you're more of a casual comic reader, you might get that wrong. And a lot of people were. And a lot of people who do what I do and we're talking about, all the details and stuff, were getting it wrong. And it was a nerd moment. It was an absolute nerd moment for me. I mean, I could have put my hair back in a ponytail and go, I must tell you that this is not actually the lost city or the Vital City of Kandor, but actually, yeah, I could have gone totally into that. It's not Kandor. That city is not Kandor. That's Argo City. Okay, let me tell you what's going on. There's 3 major cities on Krypton. Kryptonopolis, uh, Kandor, and Argo City. Kandor is the capital city and is stolen from Krypton well before it gets destroyed. The bottled city of Kandor is Brainiac. Put that over there. Brainiac has the bottled city of Kandor. Kryptonopolis becomes the capital city because they've just lost one. That's where Jor-El and Lara are. That's where he's trying to convince the council or the Senate or whatever they call themselves that it's, the planet's going to die. We need to get everybody off the planet, blah, blah, blah. Sometimes he wants to put everybody in the Phantom Zone. Sometimes there's other things. Anyway, that's all Kryptonopolis. Argo City is where Zor-El lives. Zor-El, Jor-El's brother. Jor-El, scientist, can build a rocket ship. Zor-El, architect. Now, what Zor-El does is he believes Jor-El, but Jor-El spends all his time trying to convince the council to save everybody. Zor-El goes, they ain't going to go for it. I'm going to save my city. And he basically comes up with a way to create a dome to break Argo City when the planet busts apart, to protect Argo City and kind of sustain it until they can get somewhere else. That's the dome we're seeing. That's Argo City. So it's not Kandor. And there's what happens in the comics changes, but usually what we find out is that it drifts into the like near a yellow sun, and in doing so, the planet they're living on, or the piece of the planet that they're living on, becomes toxic to all the people there, and he's not able to save them. But he's able to save Kara Zor-El. So that's the key right there. And if you read the Woman of Tomorrow series, that's the approach they do there too. So Argo City saves itself, or Zor-El saves Argo City, but when it gets off into space, it becomes toxic to the people, and they all die off. And that explains the line in there, Krypton didn't die in a day. The gods weren't that merciful. Now, don't feel bad if you thought it was Kandor, because there is something, and I know a lot of people, a lot of this stuff is the golden age or silver age of the comics, so you may not have been able to read all the old comics, but we watched the animated series, we watched the cartoons, and I'm pretty sure it was in Superman the Animated Series where Superman goes up against Brainiac, ends up inside the city of Kandor, the bottled city of Kandor, and while there finds Zor-El and his wife. And that's because the animated series decided that would be easier to explain. But that's not how it is in the comics. And I don't see that being what's going on. Because if you watch how in the trailer that dome comes up, it comes from like an item in the center of the city. It doesn't look like it's coming down from space. It's like a device in the center of the city is creating this dome. So the other thing that I really need people to understand, because this is what, and I'm reacting to a lot of stuff online, but James Gunn didn't write this movie. He isn't directing the movie. He didn't tell them how to make it. He's just approved the script and producing. So the fact that it looks like Guardians of the Galaxy. That's how Craig Gillespie wanted to make it. And, Anna Noguera wrote it. And if you're like, well, why is she a party girl? Why is all this other stuff? If you look at the source material, which they display at the end of the trailer saying, then you'll see this is the character from that book. We talked about this last night. Good. See, the problem is that most people have, again, their experience with Supergirl. Supergirl has not been an incredibly popular character. What happened was, she even got killed off in Crisis, replaced by an alien shapeshifter for a while, and then eventually brought back. Her origin has changed so much. But what's happened outside of the comics, while they're, Supergirl World of Tomorrow may be the quintessential Supergirl story, because there really aren't a lot of, Supergirl stories that stand out. It's like when you think of Batman, well, you got Long Halloween, you got Hush, you've got Year One, you got these not monarch stories. I'm missing a word, but these bedrock stories, these, the ones that kind of define the character. Yeah, in Death of Superman, it was a replacement Supergirl who was in love with Lex. It was the 90s. But so there really aren't that many stories that create the character, that are the quintessential character elements of the character. So what happens is they're making a Superman movie in the 70s. They were like, well, let's make a Supergirl movie. Okay. Well, they just made her the same personality as Superman. And when it came to the Arrowverse, if you think about it, what was the big complaint about Green Arrow or Arrow? People kept saying, that's not Green Arrow, that's Batman. You've made Batman, a Green Arrow into Batman. Well, they made Supergirl into Superman because they couldn't have Batman and they couldn't have Superman. They could have the Flash, so they could make him the Flash. But then they've still kind of made him a little bit more Wally and a little less Barry. But you get the idea. When they brought these characters in, they were like, so they wanted, when they used the Atom, they actually had a different character they were going to use. I think it was Blue Beetle. But they had to switch. But when they made the Atom, suddenly he had an exoskeleton because they were building an exoskeleton for Blue Beetle. And they went, shit, we don't get Blue Beetle. Okay, what do we get? The Atom. Atom wears an exoskeleton. Really? He never doesn't. Shut up. Move on. And that's, and suddenly he's rich. It's you look at that character and it's Blue Beetle. It's not Ray Palmer. It's not the Atom. Well, Supergirl in her show is Superman. She's working at a newspaper. She's got Jimmy Olsen with her. Cat Grant's there. They just took the Superman story and went, gender swap. Here we go. Supergirl. We got it now. Don't get me wrong. I think Melissa Benoist or Benoist, I always heard it as Benoist, but I've been hearing it lately other ways, is terrific. And I enjoyed most of those shows. And I loved Arrow. I thought Stephen Amell was great as Green Arrow. But it's a different Green Arrow. So, but that's why I think a lot of people are going, that's not Supergirl. No, that is Supergirl. It's not a carbon copy of Superman. I actually heard one guy, I wanted to reach through the screen and smack him. He said, "This isn't a role model. Girls need something to look up to." And my thought was, nobody said that about Homelander. Superman is someone that people can look up to. That's how the character's portrayed. But they're not creating role models, they're telling stories. And this is the story they're telling. And we got to stop looking at the hero or the character at the beginning and thinking that's the end result. I mean, this is a weird reference, but do you remember the Ben Affleck Daredevil movie? A lot of people hated it because that's not Daredevil. He wouldn't let that guy get hit by the train. He wouldn't have this, he wouldn't have that. At the end of the movie, that's exactly who Daredevil is. But he has to get there. He starts off as a vigilante and he ends up a hero. That's the same arc we just got in the Batman. He's vengeance in the beginning. He's hope and heroism at the end. So we got to start letting these writers and directors and characters tell the story and then make a judgment and not try to judge everything off of a 1.5-minute trailer. Yeah, no, she's not going to be drunk the whole time. There's a great story here. Now, if people were complaining, this is just True Grit. This is just a superhero version of True Grit. I'd be like, yeah. But then Avatar is just a alien version of Pocahontas or Fern Gully. We've seen this stuff before. But that's the thing. We got to let these stories be told. Dancing with Smurfs. Nice. So I'm just the reactions out there, and maybe it's driven by the whole Snyder gun thing, but there seems to be so much negativity. But when you listen to the people who are actually talking about it, they like it. But there's a few people coming out and they're like, oh my God, it's just Guardians of the Galaxy. She's wearing Star-Lord's trench coat. She's wearing a trench coat in the comic. She's hiding her outfit. She doesn't live on Earth like Superman does. She wasn't raised there. She probably doesn't have that many things. So she throws a t-shirt and a coat on to hide the fact she's a Supergirl. Sorry, people have been frustrating me this weekend a lot. All right, I got to do a quick score check. Keep your fingers crossed for me. Oh, it went down the page. Means it's probably over. Oh, damn it. They lost. Oh, well. Should have expected it. Panthers been going up and down all season, so they lost 20-17 in the last minute. So, okay. All right, let's what were your guys' thoughts on Superman or Supergirl? Did you like the trailer? Does it bother you if it feels like Guardians of the Galaxy? Because last time I checked, everybody liked Guardians of the Galaxy. And if this was if Gunn wasn't running DC, would anybody say anything? Would they care? Oh, it's a James Gunn movie. He's just doing the same thing over again. He's not doing it. The guy that directed I, Tonya and Cruella is directing it. Oh, that's frustrating. So, okay, Jay says, I dug the trailer and I think since Guardians became so popular, everything would be compared to it. The other thing people were complaining, I saw a guy, wow, I can't believe this guy spent that much time on it. He went on for like 10 minutes complaining about the music. Yeah, I know there's some people that don't like Tom King. Um, he was complaining about the use of Blondie's Call Me. And his complaint was that all of these movies are using older music and that these newer characters should be listening to more modern music. You know, they should be listening to the bands of today. And I had to think about that because what music do you guys listen to? I mean, how did you find that music? Your friends at school? Siblings? Your parents? You know some of the first music I ever listened to? Elvis, Neil Sedaka, Neil Diamond, John Denver, Glenn Campbell. I'm not a country western guy. And a lot of the older music, not really my stuff, but that's what my mom played. I know so much more country music than I should, you know. Brooks and Dunn, Boot Scoot Boogie, uh, gonna hire a wino to decorate my home because that's what I was exposed to. My brother, he was more into metal. So I would hear Iron Maiden and Metallica, but he also listened to Billy Joel, and he listened to Elton John. My Uncle Dave showed up one day, had bought us an 8-track of Queen Live Killers. We played that and over again. And it was on an 8-track, so I know when I would be singing along and expect to hear that track pop when it goes to the next track, and it would be thrown off when that wasn't part of the song. Like if I hear the song on the radio. So yeah, it's super. Look at this particular character. I don't think she's been on Earth very long. She's still dealing with the death of her planet, basically. You know, this isn't like Clark, who was raised from an infant with adoptive parents and didn't learn about any of this stuff until later on. She was there. She was with her family. She was with all the people of Argo City, and now they're all gone. Every single person. You know, that's very different. So, and where did she find music? She's got a ship she's flying in. Did it come with the ship? When she got to Earth and found Kal-El, where did she stay? How was she introduced to music? So just to say, oh, she should be listening to the modern stuff. We don't know how long she's been on Earth, where the music came from. It, you know, the explanation of why um, Star-Lord was into the older music made a lot of sense. Partly because it was the last music his mom gave him, but also in space, you don't have access to all that stuff, at least in their universe. So to sit there going, oh no, she should be listening to this, that, and the other, it's new bands. It's like, really? That seems like a really weird thing to hang your hat on. That's what I'm going to get upset about. So I don't know, man. This trailer is much more controversial than it should have been, because if you just look at the trailer and stop looking for things to pick apart, it's a good trailer. Now, I'm going to let you in on a couple secrets here. I have read Woman of Tomorrow, the Tom King story, the Bill Evely story. Not a particular fan of it. Didn't really do it for me. Now, the concept, yes. To me, though, the story felt like it drug out, that there was a few twists that didn't really fit. And, you know, there's a couple stories that people love that I'm not a big fan of. And part of it is also because of the artwork. I have nothing against her artwork. I think she's an extremely talented artist. And the people, but it doesn't click for me. This is the same thing as All-Star Superman. I think Frank Quietly is an incredibly talented person, but I'm not a fan of the art, if that makes sense. I'm not knocking Frank Quietly. I'm not knocking Bill Evely, but that's not the style that gets me to want to read a comic. So I don't have the love for those two stories that a lot of people do. But that didn't make me look at Superman going, I'm not going to watch this because he's using All-Star Superman as the thing, and I didn't like it. Let me see what James Gunn does with it. Let me see what he comes up with. Supergirl is the same way, But a lot of people do love this story, and that's a sign that there's something there. And like I said, I've read it. I know the beats of it. And the idea that they're going to compress that into a 2-hour movie, I think is good. Because I think part of the problem with the series is a bit too meandering. There's a bit too much time on this planet, time on that planet, just there's an old saying as a writer is everything has to be for moving the story forward. And I don't know if I 100% agree with that all the time, but there's a good majority of it. There's also character moments. I'm a big proponent of character moments where, I do them in the Lucius Fogg books, where Jimmy will go and have breakfast with Tiny, and the conversation, and it's there to build character, to give something depth, fill in from the story, but it's not necessarily moving the main plot forward. But Jay says, I'm not a big fan of All-Star Superman myself. It's all right, but I feel there are better Superman stories. Yeah, I agree. Wow. My mind just went back to our first topic. Because you mentioned better Superman stories. One of the Superman stories I like that I know a lot of people didn't get into is For Tomorrow. That was the one by Brian Azzarello and Jim Lee. And one of the things I liked about it was the priest having the crisis of faith and dealing with the idea of, well, what do you do when there's someone like Superman in the world? I actually owned a part of one of those pages for a while. Don't anymore. I still have the Batman Hush page, but I don't have that. Anyway, and that made me go back to our original talk about Knives Out, or the Wake Up Dead Man, because that was something else I really loved about Wake Up Dead Man, is their handling of religion. I am not a religious person, but it didn't come across. It treated religion with respect, both the good and the bad. And I can appreciate that. When you show something balanced, to me, that's good writing. So, all right. So I think I've lambasted about Supergirl and the trailer and people's reactions long enough. Let's go ahead and switch over to the Batman. Now, you guys probably heard the news last weekend, and it has been confirmed by the studio or Gunn but it has been denied by Gunn, that Scarlett Johansson is in talks. And when they're usually in talks at this point, pretty good chance they're going to be in the Batman. Now, some news came out in the last few hours, but originally people started thinking, well, who's this character going to be? And a lot of people went to the character of Andrea Beaumont. And if you don't know this character, it's probably not a surprise. She's from the Batman the Animated Series movie they did, Mask of the Phantasm. And she is the Phantasm. Well, I don't want to get into spoilers, but she is a major character in that. And she's an old love interest from Batman's past, or Bruce's past. And people assumed that that's who she was going to play. They're like, well, it's not going to be Poison Ivy, and it's not going to be this and that. But it's not going to be her. I'm fairly confident in saying that. For one reason is because when they mention, or what specifically what Matt Reeves said about the villain, is that it's someone that hasn't been done in a film or a movie. He didn't say it's someone who hasn't been done in a live action movie. Mask of the Phantasm was a movie. And both Matt and his co-author refer to it as a movie in other conversations. So that right there makes me doubt Andrea Beaumont heavily, but also where the character is at this point. We are still looking at a year 2 type Batman. We're talking months after the city's flooded, not years. I don't see a period of time that Phantasm makes sense. I don't know if it's considered the first DCAU movie. I mean, it's definitely the first DC animated movie, but it was created by the team doing the Batman animated series. And for Andrea Beaumont to work, you have to show when Bruce is first trying to become Batman, him having that love interest that comes in and almost takes him off course. Matt Reeves' Batman, I don't think has that. It doesn't fit. He is not doing the persona, the foppish playboy type persona. He's not doing any of that. All he is doing is seeking vengeance. And that character does not fit having a romantic relationship in. I mean, look how there's supposedly a romance between him and Selena. They just stared at each other a lot in one kiss. This is not a guy who's going to be going on dates and stuff, which is what he did with Andrea Beaumont. Now, could they change all that? Yeah. But the problem is there isn't a lot of flexibility. Now, they're not doing a straight adaptation. And Mask of the Phantasm, it would be, that character has one specific story. And if you change it so that the audience doesn't know the outcome, you kind of take away from the only thing that makes that character interesting. So I cannot see that character working in this universe yet. You know? Now, what characters could she be playing? Well, one of the one I thought of is I know there's a female character that leads the Court of Owls. And as much as I'm not a huge Court of Owls fan either, but I know they're going, they're probably going that direction eventually. I could see them using her here to set the character up and then paying it off in the third movie. Because it's talked about, it's a trilogy already. And they're already talking about how the third movie is kind of in production now too. So, or at least they're laying it out. So could she be, and I can't think of the name of the character, but she's she helps run the Court of Owls. But there's a new report coming from multiple sources saying that who she's going to play is Harvey Dent's wife, Gilda. Now, that becomes very interesting because we know that some of the elements in the first the Batman movie, were pulled from The Long Halloween. Well, if they continue that, so yeah, Jay, go have fun. Say hey to Kyle. So if they continue that, then her playing Gilda ends up being a huge part of The Long Halloween. So it would make sense to get an actress on the level of Scarlett Johansson. It's also a chance to introduce Harvey Dent. And note, I'm saying introduce Harvey Dent, not necessarily introduce Two-Face. So they could twist it around some, change it up a bit, and still do a good take on it. And one of the things they could do, if they wanted to, is in The Long Halloween, Batman goes to Calendar Man in kind of a Hannibal Lecter style thing. But there's already 2 other prisoners in Arkham. So what if he was, instead of going to Calendar Man, what if he's going to Riddler? And the Riddler becomes the Calendar Man role from Long Halloween. And it's focused on mob bosses again. What if that's kind of the role there? That's how it starts going. So that's my thought, is that I don't see her as Phantasm. I don't see her as Poison Ivy. I don't think they're going to put her in, a costume. But hearing her hearing the rumors that she might be Gilda, that makes a lot of sense. There's another rumor going around that Brad Pitt was offered the role of Harvey Dent's father, which would make a lot of sense there too. Now I know we have Harvey in movies before. So, and what Matt said of it's not a story that was done before. Harvey's origin has been done, but Long Halloween isn't Harvey's origin. It's the holiday killer. So, and also if they're doing that, that's really staying off the toes of whatever they do in the DCU of Batman. Or maybe they set it up and they do Hush in number 2 and the Holiday Killer in 3, or move it around. I don't know. Bottom line is, it's not going to be a direct adaptation. If you look at the first Batman movie, there's no comic you could pick up and go, see, they did this. And most comic book movies are that way. They get the basic origin, stuff like that. But when you're doing a murder mystery, and that's what Matt Reed is doing, are murder mysteries, you really don't want the audience to be able to know who the killer was before you do the show or before you do the movie. So that's kind of where I see them going. Is they're going to kind of adapt part of it, but they're going to make changes, you know? So if she's Gilda and they bring us in a Harvey Dent, stuff like that. By the way, supposedly Brad Pitt couldn't make it work schedule wise. So no Brad Pitt. I don't know. I'm still curious what they're going to do, and I don't know how reliable some of this information is. It sounds like Scarlett Johansson's casting is pretty reliable, but who she's playing, stuff like that, still up in the air. So take it all with a grain of salt. Um, all right, guys, I think we're going to wrap that up there. I thank you for tuning in. I hope you all are going to have a awesome weekend. I will be back next Sunday. I don't know what we'll talk about, but we'll talk about something because things keep happening. So, hope you all have a good week. Take care, and I will see you next week.